Hi and welcome to this video where my attention has been on removing this, the throttle body, which is quite an intricate piece of equipment which appears to have two throttles and several sensors. So remove that. That then leads on to me removing the wiring onto the alternator and the oil pressure switch at the front. So removed that. I also then removed the vacuum pump on the right hand side of the engine. Also took this plastic cover off on the camshaft to see if there's any obvious damage to the lobes of the cam. Removed the air filter and took a little bit more detailed look at some of these sensors that are on these items, because obviously I didn't know what these sensors are, so I wanted to try and identify things so that I know what the different items are on the car. And this is obviously all in preparation for removing the injectors, the inlet manifold, and finally it will be removing the cam cover to have a look and see if we've got any obvious damage inside. Obviously I know the timing chain tensioner has probably destroyed itself. Everything appears to be clean, so I'm hoping that perhaps it's just the tensioner on the chain between the two cams that's at fault, which would be nice if it's just that. But anyway, so yeah, hopefully you'll find this video of use to you, and many thanks for watching.
So before I do anything else, it's probably a good idea to disconnect the battery at this point. So the battery is located here under this hidden panel, like so. It's not quite so easy to access on this, and then it's a 10mm socket to undo that. Now note, this one actually has an IBS module on it, which is like an advanced battery management system. So it actually monitors the amount of power that's being used by the battery, and probably controls things so you don't end up with a flat battery, like you could do if you were listening to the radio. Probably shuts off the car if the engine's not running. But anyway, so that's now disconnected, so we can now remove the throttle body wiring and the turbo intercooler hose. So I'll show a couple of photos here of the throttle body and the wiring loom there. You can also see the intercooler hose. So we have got a couple of sensors on here, which is the manifold temperature sensor and a pressure sensor. And here we've got the throttle connectors as well. Right then, so we'll just take the two throttle connections off. So carefully pull those off. So it's got like two throttles here. So that one I believe allows warm air from the turbo in, and I believe this might be the main throttle that controls the air from the turbo intercooler into the intake manifold. So we just need to unclip this wiring conduit like so, and then we've got a couple of sensors here. So we've got one here which is a pressure sensor, and then the next one is a temperature sensor, I believe. So just unclip that. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take the wiring away from this, on the basis I'm going to probably be working on the top of the engine. So we've removed so much now, sort of in for a penny, in for a pound. Right then, so this is the intercooler hose that comes from the, so that should be the cool air coming in, and that's a 7mm socket there to undo that. Just trying to ease that off there, it's stuck on a bit. So yeah, that should be the cold air coming into the manifold, like so. So it seems to have the choice of cold or warm air, so it can control that temperature. So there's three long screws on here, and it's a 10mm socket to undo those. That's one of them. Probably best not to leave it on top of the engine because it's going to fall on the floor. Alright, so we've retrieved that. Now we've got to find another one. There it is, just at the side. Pop that one out. I've got all these metal trays, and yet I end up trying to balance things on top of the engine. Not really the best way. There it is, there's the other screw. So it's just there at the front. So these are all 10mm. So just pop that one out. So now the throttle body is just being held on by the intake pipe at the top. So I'm just checking those to see that they're all the same length, and they are. So I should put those in a tray somewhere safe. So then it's a 7mm socket again for this pipe. I'm not sure why it's got those metal sort of rings around that. I don't quite get that. But anyway, must look into that, find out why they're there. Never seen that before. And in saying that, I haven't seen that many engines, I guess. Right, so let's just wiggle that. Off it comes. Gradually. That's like more of a latex rubber, that one. Very flexible. Quite soft rubber as well. So we can actually see the throttle in there at the bottom. That I think is the main throttle. And we have got a little bit of oil in there. Presumably that's come from the turbo. Okay, now to removing the air filter box and pipe. So we'll have a couple of photos, again showing the air filter and also the air mass meter sensor, which is coloured in orange there. Right then, so normally the turbo would be unclipped as well, but we'll take this sensor off first. Now this one's actually broken on mine, so this is the hot film air mass meter sensor. Just pop that off. So somebody's obviously been playing around there and they've broken that clip on that. So at least we know somebody's been tinkering, and it all seems very loose as well on this particular car. So a 7mm socket there for that big Jubilee clip. Now you could unclip that normally, but it has just slid off there quite nicely. And we've also got an intermediate oily pipe there. Probably takes some of the fumes from the top of the engine back into the intake, I presume. And this just sort of falls away. So again, I think I've probably got some broken parts on this. Also looks like there's a dodgy screw there that's holding the pipe work in place. And there we can actually see the sensor there at the top. Right then, so we'll remove the oil dipstick next. So I'm just going to remove this so that we've got better access to see some of the sensors. So it's a 10mm socket for that. And the tube has a little rubber O-ring at the bottom. You don't want to damage that, so just pull that out, and there we can see our dipstick at the end. But it does give us access to the sensor that's just next to it. And now to remove the wiring to the oil pressure sensor and alternator. Okay, and here's a couple of photos just showing the oil pressure switch there and the alternator, and here's the wiring to that alternator and the oil pressure switch. So we're just going to undo this sensor down here. I actually thought that was the coolant sensor for some reason. I'm used to the oil sensors being at the back of the engine, but on this particular model that is the oil pressure switch. Gives us our red light on the dashboard. So we'll just unclip the control wire here on the alternator. So again, this car's got quite a lot of electronic control. So there's obviously some fuel saving devices going on here. And the main cable is a 13mm socket, and there is also a split washer underneath that. So that's the main cable that goes to the battery for the charging. Hence I disconnected the battery, because this could have got a little bit spicy especially if that wire just touched the alternator like it just has. I think we could have had some sparks crackling away there. Right then, so that's that disconnecting. We just got a cable tie there holding the wire, the single wire going to the oil pressure switch. So that now means I can just take this wiring and fold it away to the back. Just gives me nice clear access, because I presume I'm going to end up having to take the timing belt off this engine. Okay then, so what I'll do now is to remove the plastic cam cover and see if there are any obvious signs of damage. So here's a picture of the camshaft cover, and also you can see the vacuum pump there and also the fuel filter. So we'll now just take a quick look at the cover. So this is what it looks like. So it's held on by 7 screws, and here's the underside view of it showing the rubber gasket. Okay then, so it's an 8mm socket for those 7 screws. So we'll whiz these off. There we are, so that's the first one. We are all the same length. So 1, 2, 3. Try and speed this up a little bit. So where's that other one? Where's number 4? It's just down there. That's difficult to get to. So you might find one of those magnetic things helpful, as long as it doesn't stick to the car. Try and get it to stick to the bolt or the screw. We get our next one out there. It's number 5. Number 6 is going to need a magnet as well. Gotcha. Pop that in there, and then finally number 7 that's in the centre. Now I'm not sure if I'm going to see any sort of aluminium. I keep expecting to see some aluminium because the filter had so much aluminium in it. So let's have a look, see what we got. Just got to break the seal loose first. Come on. Here we go. Watch the lights. Okay, are we going to see a mess in there? No sign of aluminium. And the cams presumably look okay. I'm no expert, but they don't look damaged too much, if there is any damage. Looks like normal wear and tear to me. Right, let's rotate the engine, see what we get. So I'm going to use an 18mm spanner here. Let's just see if things rotate okay. Seems to rotate and then ping a bit, presumably on the chain. So it just flicks there. I'm presuming the tension is not working on that chain that's just between the inlet and exhaust valves. Again, everything looks sort of okay-ish as far as I can tell there. Okay then. Right, so let's remove the vacuum pump for the brake servo. So here's a photo showing that vacuum pump. And that's what it looks like underneath. And you can see that gauze filter there. So the question is that gauze filter blocked at all? So we undo the vacuum pipe, you just push underneath on that, like a little plastic push-up clip, like you get on a fuel pipe. Just seems to be on the underneath though. And then it's a 10mm deep socket to undo the 2 screws holding this on, like so. We speed this up a little bit, and there we go. They're quite long screws. There's one of them. Again, we're balancing everything on the engine. We've still not learnt our lesson about putting things in metal trays, even though we have plenty of magnetic trays. Right then, so here it comes. There will be oil that drips out from this, and here's the filter. And it looks perfectly clear. So there's no debris in that filter whatsoever. I don't think this engine's suffering from oil starvation. Doesn't look like oil starvation, does it? Right then, let's take a closer look at this vacuum pump. So, see what we can see. We'll give it a bit of a wipe over. So I had seen on some of the YouTube videos that this gauze ends up getting full up, clogged up, and this one's not, it's perfectly clean. So this is rotated by the exhaust cam, I presume, because there's like a keyway at the end there that goes into the cam, and then as you rotate that cam, this obviously creates the vacuum, I believe, for the brake servo. So we give that a little rotate. Now, if you do rotate it, be aware that it might actually squirt a bit of oil out as you turn that. So we'll have a go. Ooh, you can hear it. Whoop, there we go. Squirting a bit of oil there onto my IKEA dining room table. Don't think I'd want to eat off this table again now. Yeah, you can hear it sucking away there quite nicely. Right, so that's the vacuum pump, and everything appears to be okay with that. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the throttle body then. So here is the throttle body, and we can actually see the manifold temperature sensor and the pressure sensor there. I've put photos alongside that so you can see it. And there's the throttle, which is the main throttle, I believe, from the intercooler underneath. So just going to have a little look at this. Basically just try and clean things up a bit, because there is a little bit of oil in there. Now I probably should have removed the sensors before I started squirting brake cleaner in there. So there's the temperature sensor, you can just see that there. And behind that would be the manifold pressure sensor. So that's the throttle to the turbo, that one. And the two stepper motors for the butterfly valves. So we'll give it a little squirt with brake cleaner. I think you normally use carburetor cleaner or like a throttle body. I know these used to choke up on some of the petrol cars. I think I used to have a Volvo C70 that used to choke up and need cleaning out. So I'm basically doing the same with this. This is obviously a diesel. So we get some of that oil out there. Like I say, everything seems to be looking pretty tidy on this car so far. I'm wondering whether it's just the tensioner for the chain that's actually damaged. Yeah, so anyway, so there is the throttle body, which is quite an intricate piece of equipment with several sensors. Right then, so let's take a closer look at the air filter and the hot film air mass meter sensor. So here's a photo of the air filter box with that air mass meter sensor on it. And here is the air mass meter sensor, a little bit of a close-up there of it. Right then, so let's crack on and take this apart for a closer inspection. So it's 8mm socket there for the 3 screws. Those are like self-tapping plastic screws. And then this should just pull off. There is a rubber seal there on the back of it. And there is the air mass meter. So it looks like that's a sealed one piece there. I don't think the actual sensor comes out of that. And then while we're here, we might as well have a quick look at the air filter. Again, it gives me an idea of the maintenance of the car. So that still looks fairly clean. So it is looking like this car has been serviced. I mean, that filter does look relatively new. So have a quick look in the box. Again, there's not that much in the way of debris in there. So I'm thinking this car has actually been serviced quite well. And then we'll have a brief look at the oil pressure switch. So here it is after it's been cleaned up. And there's just a single connector there. So to remove this, it's a 22mm deep socket. Like so. We just wind that off. Now I actually was expecting coolant to rush out of here. So I was a bit surprised when I saw black oil. I'm always used to these sensors being mounted at the back of the engine. So there we are, and we'll show you a clean photo of that now. There we go. Okay, and a brief video of how things now look in the engine bay. There's our diesel fuel filter there. We can still see the black lava that's come out of those injectors. That's my next job, is to remove those injectors. So just coming down the front of the engine there. Like I say, I do think I'm going to end up having to take the timing belt off this when I come to remove the camshaft cover after getting those injectors out. There's a brief look along the cam. I think that's the exhaust cam. It's certainly next to the exhaust. Okay then, so, and for some reference photographs. So I'll start by showing the wiring loom and where all the different connectors go to. And here's the throttle body with those two sensors on, and also the pipe to the intercooler. You can pause these to view for longer if you wish. And here's the temperature sensor for the inlet manifold. And then the pressure sensor that's made by Denso. So there's a little rubber seal there you can probably just make out. And then here's a photo showing all the sort of parts of the throttle body and which way the air's flowing into it and out of it. There's the butterfly valve, the main throttle, which I'm holding closed there, and then this one's already closed and that's from the turbo. So here's our oil pressure switch and the wiring for the alternator, and there's the oil pressure switch there, all cleaned up. Another couple of photos showing that. So it's just a single wire there. And then we go on to the air filter, which has the air mass meter sensor in it, which is coloured orange. And then onto the air filter housing. And then back onto the air mass meter. So that's quite an intricate little device there. And then onto the camshaft cover there, where we can see the fuel filter and the vacuum pump. All the screws there for the camshaft cover. The rubber gaskets. Then onto the vacuum pump. And showing the pipe there. And the little gauze filter. So you've been watching removing the throttle body and vacuum pump on a 2009 MINI R56. And thank you for watching, and I hope this video helps you service and maintain your car within your budget. This video was filmed and edited by me, Mark Savage, in April 2022, and I can be found on Instagram and Facebook as Coats and Gators.